Good evening. At this time, I'm going to reconvene the Quinta City Council meeting of December 3, 2013. At this time, I'd ask that you all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Place your hand over your heart and repeat with me.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. First item on the agenda is public comment. Anybody wishing to speak on an item which is on the agenda, I'd ask that you please fill out a request to speak form. It's a form like this. It's in the back of the room, and give it to our city clerk. At this time, anybody wishing to speak on an item not on the agenda may do so. I do have two requests to speak on items not on the agenda, and if you would be so kind as to come up to the podium and try and keep your comments to roughly 3 minutes, we'd really appreciate it. First one is Alan Worthy.
Good afternoon. The last time was much longer beard and hair. You might recognize the jacket. Thank you for your time and your patience last time. I was quite emotional, and I think it's obvious why. And I appreciate your time and patience. This has been bizarre. I've seen it like this time. I was showing everybody the last time. Again, thank you for your patience. I'm going to just show you this power of attorney because, again, the crime has come from Eisenhower Medical Center to Cathedral City to Palm Springs and ricocheted back here to your neighboring community just north of here. And as you can see, and as I have testified against Eisenhower in court, a first grader could see that the same person that filled out this power of attorney, big A, little a, big B, little b, it's absurd. And this went through, well over a year with my calling the risk management and legal department at Eisenhower to no avail. There's that HIPAA law, which most of you acknowledge you're aware of. And I'm going to come back to you this to the moment. Unfortunately, no offense, you'll know why in a moment. But the whole thing is a conundrum, I believe that's the word, because it's completely fraudulent, in fact doesn't exist. But my item D1 states, as my agent, and I did not appoint him, he appointed himself, states, attorney in fact to act for me in any lawful way. Well, there was nothing lawful about that this fraudulent document, nor the fraudulent paper mill dealership that it ran through, and the criminal that lives near here, when you murdered me. And then the second page, of course, contains all of this handwriting, or comatose signature, which is not legal or valid. I did not execute it in my capacity. I have no capacity. The instrument or the person or the entity upon behalf of which the person acted executed the instrument. Again, he's not an heir and not a shareholder in my production company. So, the conundrum and the lack of cooperation from the Palm Springs Police Department, Eisenhower Legal Department, again, I can confirm that there have been 8 people fired there because of what happened to me. And again, my name is Thomas Allen, and I go by Allen. It's my mother's maiden name. And here, I've had this letter in my possession. It's dated December 17th of 2012. Another with regard to HIPAA, the privacy law. This is not my insurance company. And this is pertinent because when I did not die of injuries, this man, David Tolman, has used every excuse in the book with the police to get away with grand auto theft, was fraudulent paperwork. Thank God for the D&B legal department. They never processed the title for my beautiful black Mercedes-Benz E500. But this, again, the first clue is it's addressed to Alan Worthy. So anytime it says Alan Worthy and not Thomas Worthy or Thomas Allen Worthy, I know it's a legal problem. I don't know how to get into the back. It's not my insurance company, Ms. Evans, I'm gonna come back to you again in a moment. It says, "Dear Alan Worthy, the following medical bills were submitted, bills and records were submitted to our company in error. I am forwarding them to you in case you need a copy for any reason. Sincerely, I'll say Jane Doe from Nationwide Insurance Company." Well, you got I needed it. HIPAA. Unfortunately, a week ago today, I had a bad fall at Sprouts grocery store, of course. And I was taken to, I said, "Don't take me to Eisenhower," because I couldn't get up. And they said, "No, we're going to take you to JFK." And I was admitted. And the following day, after late in the day when I was discharged and they were wheeling me down the hallway, I said, "Well, I know that woman. It's you on the wall." So I want to tell you, it's the other reason I'm here, and I see the red light is on. Excuse me, but the other reason I'm here is to tell you thank you. Because the care there, after what I've been through at Eisenhower, I mean, I was comatose the whole time, so I remember nothing except after the fact, as I said. But everybody over there at your fine hospital, your work is paid off. They're completely professional, just really super people. From the time I came in to the
Mr. Worthy,
ER,
you're going to have to wind it up, please.
yeah, I just wanted to say thank you because they're just all pros. I had reason to call them today and they're just super. So thank you.
I'll pass that along, and I'm just glad to see that you're doing so well because of all you've gone through.
Thank
So,
you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And I'm embarrassed. I'm so sorry. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Lothar. Give us your name and address for the record.
Thank you. Lothar Vashels, Palm Desert, California. Mayor, council members, staff, and meeting attendees. I'm going to spend a few minutes with you talking about a topic I thought I knew a little bit about a year ago, but now I think I understand the enormity of single and parenting. Different studies will indicate that over half of this family situation now are one-parent families. One parent handling all the challenge, taking care of it. Some of you may have friends or know of situations, perhaps family members who are involved in that issue, and so you understand that. There's an article in the Los Angeles Times a couple weeks ago about a high school coach who said that he estimated that 60% of the nearly 100 players on his varsity and junior varsity teams are guided by single mothers, 60%. The challenges are enormous, tremendous pressure. We got interested in this at St. John Lutheran Church and put together a sample session last summer. The program itself is really extremely well done. It's in over 300 churches across the United States. To our knowledge, we're the only one that has it available here. I hope that changes. There's no cost to the participants. $15 for a workbook is all we ask for. We'll take care of food, we'll take care of child care. The program starts January 13th, as you can see on the separate sheet that you may also have access to. And I have extra copies of this with the city clerk for anyone who might like a copy in the audience regarding participating. 13 sessions. Each session stands alone. It starts with a 30-minute video by someone who is currently a single parent or has been a single parent and can speak with knowledge about the situation. There is then a guided questionnaire, giving them a chance to explore it. And then there is actually a take-home session in the workbook where they have homework, they call it, for the next week. Although the program is held at our church, it is not an evangelistic issue. We're looking at the topic itself. The Bible is referred to only as a textbook with ideas and comments helpful to the participants that they can use in their homework issue. We're north of Fred Waring, on the west side of the street, just south of the Albertsons and Ralph's shopping areas. You may have driven by there at night and seen the lit cross. The 13-week program, just to give you an idea what's covered: tired and overwhelmed, your children and your fears, rest and comfort, money and career, parental goals and expectations, suffering and adversity, 2 sessions on emotions and stability, parenting tools and projects, parenting approaches, talking and listening, conflict and resolution, dating and single sexuality. Again, each session stands by itself. If the individual cannot make all 13 sessions, we'll offer this again further next year and give them a chance to do makeup. Questions?
I have,
Yeah.
I have one on the, if I'm to understand the date, of January 13th through April 7th
Yes.
of 2013.
Monday nights.
Of 2013.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you.
So you're,
Murphy wins again.
You're behind.
Thanks
so
very
they
much.
just started in 2014.
Yeah, that's
Okay,
that's
Just
very
checking.
timely. We're just starting to distribute this.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Lothar.
So I have a quick question. What happens to the children while the parents are doing this? Is there daycare provided?
I'm sorry.
If the single parent is attending this, is there daycare provided?
Yes, child care is provided, and we also provide food for the parents as well as the children,
Okay,
at no cost.
that's good to know.
Great.
That's, yeah, thank you.
Okay. Greg McGuire?
Yes. Thank you for this opportunity to speak to the council.
Give us your name and address for the record. It goes on the recorder.
Gregory McGuire, live at 78935 Wakefield Circle in La Quinta, in North La Quinta. And I am, again, a special assessment district for the North La Quinta area. For one thing, I only recently found out about this, and the only thing we've ever seen, we're in zone 3, I guess it is. This is all we ever got. We get 3 or 4 of these, maybe 10 a week altogether. To me, it looked like an ad for a guy trying to sell landscaping services. And I have not found one single one of my neighbors, except for a few others sitting here today, that ever noticed this either. So the notice regarding these workshops was mainly, I guess, in the newspaper. I would have gone to the ones, according to what I see in the minutes, there were some as early as for our zone in October, and this has been going on with reports from Wildan since March of 2013, without any notice to us. And so I'm saying that I believe the notice thus far has been very bad from the city. I was at the 11/16/13 meeting, and I've seen in the city newspaper that the support for this measure has been pretty heavy by residents of North La Quinta. It was not at the November 16th meeting. Nearly everyone was against it, just on principle that the landscape and lighting district was formed to take care of all publicly owned parcels in the city. Clearly, I called the city to get information about this and emailed them, the City Department of Public Works. I was sent a 1989 tentative, the conditions for a 1989 tentative map for the subdivisions in Zone 3. That map was never executed, the conditions were never met. The map I bought my home under was a final map dated 1999. It's possible that the city has been reviewing the 1989 map and really believes there's no liability. But the 1999 map says the city owns the parcels, and that would make them subject to being maintained by the landscape and lighting district like any other parcel or any median in the city. The latest city's contract says that the medians and the parkways, we have parkways in North La Quinta instead of medians because a median won't fit down Adams Street. So the alternative that the city wanted done by the developer, in my case 13 years ago and accepted by the city, was parkways. And the city, I called them, I live atop a 30-foot high retaining wall. And I'm kind of a little bit upset that it has not been maintained at all, let alone have I gotten a free ride. This has recently been rectified due to the fact that I submitted a claim to the city attorney to have something done about it. I was shocked to believe the city had done no maintenance in years and years and was claiming, they told me in an email they had no legal liability to
based on this 1989 map as opposed to a 1999. That the city attorney and the city engineer has said the city had no legal obligation to maintain these parcels. And I don't know what the city does, but it appears to me that the landscape and lighting district does have a responsibility, a legal obligation to maintain these parcels without added cost to a California district. The Department of Real Estate released our property for sale in 1999. We bought in 2013, our home was finished, in the year 2000, we bought our home. The white at the time, I cannot find it, indicated that there was no homeowners association. That's one of the reasons we bought there. I called the city planning department and I was told I didn't want to live on top of an unmaintained huge retaining wall. I was told by the planning department that they would maintain the landscaping and that wall into perpetuity because they'd made some kind of a deal with the developer. Been told as of November 16th there was a big mistake and that never happened. However, we relied on it, and we relied on the DRE's white saying it was legal for the developer to sell. And in that white, it indicated the city would be handling those city-owned parcels. So maybe this whole thing has been brought up by a mistaken interpretation of a 1989 map instead of a 1999 or later, other maps for some of the other subdivisions. But the 1989 map was never recorded, the conditions were never met. The developer, the grader who had got no farther than partial grading, went bankrupt. So none of the tentative map conditions were met. Finally, I just don't understand if all the medians in the city are maintained by the landscape and lighting district. Most of them have been built since I purchased my home and others in our neighborhood purchased our home. Just the lighting alone, the maintenance on the lighting alone, the most recent contract was $83,000 for the medians just to maintain the lighting, to keep them from having people ram into them. I don't know why they were built if the city cannot live up to its previous obligations to maintain those parkways in North La Quinta. There just simply is no place for medians. We get no more benefit out of the parkways there than anyone gets out of their medians up in the cove or any of these kind of things. There's numerous traffic circles being built. All of those are being paid for. The maintenance of them is being paid for by the landscaping and lighting district. They ought not to be built when they can't live up to their obligations to maintain what's already in La Quinta to be maintained. So I would like to suggest that the city council consider taking this off of any further measures, to take it to a ballot or anything. It's an unusual kind of election where typically these kind of elections, all done by mail, have very few return ballots, and they are not the best representation of a democratic system. Although one parcel, one vote is the proper way to do it, most people have never voted that way in their lives, and I doubt there will be any kind of reasonable return of the ballots that go out on this issue, and we have no idea when that might happen in order to mount a defense against it happening. And so that's pretty much a summary of where I'm at. I believe the landscaping and lighting district is on the hook to continue to fight, despite the fact their entire budget overrun has been blamed on North La Quinta. That simply is not. That's when the meetings start out for the workshops. And here we come down to $300,000, and right next to that it says North La Quinta's cost $300,000 causing all the overrun. I don't think it's fair, and I can imagine when the next overrun happens on the landscape and lighting, who's going to be the next special district that Will Dan and the Department of Public Works decides to target? Who will be the next neighborhood that gets targeted for another California assessment district? I have formed them myself, and I know how they can run rampant once they get started. They are tough to control. And if I don't want anything, I'd have taken a homeowners association 10 times faster than I ever would have taken a California assessment district to be on my head and on my neighbor's head. I realize I've used over my 3 minutes.
No,
But
you
I
have a
have
good
enough-
point, and that's why I'm letting you go on
Yeah.
in that, because I think there's some concern there that we need to address.
Yes. Well, I appreciate the time to do this. And as I say, even from the notice right forward, I believe that I was misinformed over the telephone, and I went to great lengths to get the most accurate information I could out of the Department of Public Works. And this may just be as simple as using a way out-of-date tentative map whose conditions were never met, as opposed to looking at the appropriate 1999 map.
Good.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you for the information, it's right. Frank, I think that maybe before too long, get a report from Tim in regards to this issue, especially this issue about utilizing two different dates on the agreement. I know that we had agreements with developers years ago that said that the development would take care of their own maintenance. Then we have others that said the city's landscape and lighting district would take care of it. So we're not totally consistent about how we handle everything on there, but our budget for the landscaping and lighting district, we're always well behind. We spend more than we bring in on that because the $36 a year that you pay on your property tax, doesn't cover. I mean, everybody's property tax doesn't cover the cost to maintain and develop landscape areas.
We're well aware of that, Your Honor. And we would think the appropriate solution would be a citywide increase in that, and the politics of that probably aren't very good right now. And going back to what I can see from Wildan's report from March of this year, that this is like an alternative to try and isolate a neighborhood and tell us we've gotten something for nothing.
We need to get into that and resolve this problem.
All right.
You bet. Andrew Kirk?
Hello, Council. My name is Andrew Kerr. I live at 79185 Desert Stream Drive. I also would like to voice my opposition to the Landscape and Lighting Assessment District. I did attend the most recent workshop held in this room just a week or so ago. I want to kind of echo the comments that were made before, and that, when, I just happened to mention in passing to a neighbor, say, hey, did you happen to hear about this? People don't know about it. The general consensus, that I thought, well, my feeling was when I attended the workshop was that people weren't there because they might be apathetic, but I think they weren't there because they didn't know about it. And then when you do tell them about it, they actually get upset, because it feels like something's trying to be jammed down our throats, and we're being asked to pay more money for something in the first place that wasn't ever managed right in the first place. I also wanted to make the council aware about, I think there was a few issues of unprofessionalism, both on the part of the Director of Public Works at the workshop and on the part of especially the consultant, which I don't know his name, but I think he was from Wildan Associates. The first question that I was allowed to ask to the Director of Public Works was, I asked him, why should the residents of North Quinta, vote in favor of an assessment like this when the medians and the parkways are in a state of disrepair? And the only answer that I was given was, we only have 10 maintenance workers for the city. That's not an answer. There's no plan. There's no, it's just, it seems like they just tell the landscape contractor, do the best you can with a limited amount of funds, and things like that. Like I said, the main part of the unprofessionalism came during a breakout session from the consultant to the city. He mentioned things like, why wouldn't we all vote in favor of something like this? Because he's in his close to his 60s, and he's not going to be around for the next 25 years when this thing, by the time all the bonds are paid back. That's ridiculous. He mentioned actually a few times how the city of La Quinta has mismanaged the landscape and lighting district, and how the cost for the landscape and lighting district should be somewhere, instead of $36 per parcel per year, should be up around $200 per year. I really don't doubt that with the cost of doing business. And then another thing that was almost like a scare tactic by the consultant was he actually said, you know, 3 options were presented to us during the workshop. One where do nothing, status quo. And we were told definitely that there would be no improvements to, we would continue to have dead plants and an irrigation system that doesn't work right. The second option was kind of a middle of the road option, and then the third option was kind of a full refurbishment, right? That would cost anywhere from this $334 to over $400 per, depending on what zone you're in. But an actual fourth option was presented by the consultant in the breakout session, and that was the city may just turn off the water altogether, and then all the plants will die. I mean, that's ridiculous.
That's
And,
not gonna happen.
you know, right, and I think that it just shows that, you know, so I just wanted to make council aware that this is what happened, and that was the most disappointing thing to me, that someone would show up and, especially someone that, you know, gets part of his livelihood. You know, the city of La Quinta is a client, and for him to say that the city mismanages the landscape and lighting district, and then to give these reasons why we should vote for it that are, you know, nothing but ridiculous. So I also want to just one last point, and that is it doesn't make any sense to me. As I mean, I'm a new resident to the city of La Quinta in the last 3-4 years, but you know, it doesn't make sense to me that for the last, I don't know, 20 some years, I guess, this $35 landscape and for $36 a year has been in place, and yet there continues to be an increase in the amount of medians. Why would we build medians if we don't have enough money to maintain what we have? All right, and so I just see mismanagement on the part of the Public Works Department, on the part of the maintenance personnel. There's other issues with you know, the water basins and things like that. There seems to be no oversight given by the Public Works Department to the contractors that are actually doing the work out there in the landscaping around our neighborhoods. So thank you for listening, and I really hope that, you know, like you said before, that this will be addressed, because it's very important to me and my neighbors, and the neighbors are just starting to talk, and I know that I'm definitely not just the only one in North La Quinta. There will be hundreds, if not of people that will be against this assessment. Thank you.
Thank you. Is it Stephanie Kerr? I never know whether that's Kerr or Carr.
It's Kerr.
Okay.
It's
Thank you.
Scottish, but I'm Italian. My husband's Scottish.
Okay.
That was my husband, so I am also against the assessment, but I'm here to talk about something else, in fact. I'm here to talk about the water basins. I live it's Stephanie Kerr, 79185 Desert Stream Drive in La Quinta. We have a water basin. We live just north of La Quinta Park, and there's a water basin there.
A retention basin.
Yes, it is, a
Okay.
retention basin,
Okay.
excuse me. And recently, over the past 2 years, we've experienced an influx of people in the retention basin because of the AYSO soccer organization utilizing it for a picture day. And what they do is block off our retention basin. They have over 1,500, that's 1,500 children and their families traipsing through our neighborhood on that day, because the city has decided to allow them to do this. They do not come through the park. They come through our neighborhood. They park in front of our driveways. They throw trash everywhere. I have complained over the last 2 years, and all it did this year was an increase from 1 Saturday, and this year it was 3 Saturdays. So now they took 3 Saturdays and blocked it off with caution tape and utilized the retention basin for this purpose. I do not believe the retention basin is meant to be used for large groups of 50 or more people. I asked if they had a temporary use permit. They did not. So I contacted, I emailed actually the city council, and I emailed the community services department. And I did get a response from the community services department from Edie Hilton, the community services director. And she stated that in future, she would implement the process of requiring the AYSO and any other group to get a temporary use permit for gathering 50 or more people. Well, understand that this water basin is in the middle of a neighborhood that is not set for that kind of traffic. We're talking about 1,500 children and their parents tracing through a small neighborhood. That is huge. There are many other places that the city could have them use. They leave trash, like I said. It's very loud, and it starts very early in the morning, and it goes all day long. And once again, this year it was for 3 Saturdays, although the 3rd Saturday was not very active. So I want to speak out against the community services department all of a sudden just setting up this water basin, this retention basin, as an allowance for large groups and parties. This is not what I want in my neighborhood. This is not why I purchased my home there. I do not want people doing this. If they set it up for temporary use permit, not only can the AYSO use it, anyone can use it. So we could have quinceañeras there every weekend. I don't know what's gonna happen down there, and it's 3 doors down from my house. And I just think that's a completely inappropriate decision, and I would like Edie Hilton's decision reversed, even if she does have the authority to make such a decision. So that's all I have to say on that.
Stephanie, let us take a look at it, because you've got a good point of what you're saying. And I think that there are parks, there are areas, soccer fields and that are open for things like
Absolutely.
this, and that we can reschedule so things are done in a more public area rather than in a private community.
Thank you.
Carol Oland? You put circles in your name like I do with mine.
Council, hi, good evening. I'm in Zone 3 of North La Quinta.
Your
And
address, please?
78990 Bayberry Lane.
Okay.
And I'm here against the proposed landscaping.
That's the light fixture. The other one's the microphone. That one, yes.
Okay. Against the proposed landscaping. I know that basically there are millions of facts that one could try and understand this. This was new to me, like other people that haven't heard about it. In a nutshell though, I don't care what the reasons are for the city, I don't care what they've spent, haven't spent, want to spend. This is not the time to tax recovering people. $300 or even $100 a year. People are still $200,000-300,000 upside down on their home loans. And if we had that much money, it would be nice to put it into our own property and bring up property values. Now on the way down here, I noticed how nice Washington's Meridian looked. Who takes care of that? City? Okay. In seeing other parts of La Quinta, North La Quinta could look dumpy to some of the people down here. It's not as pretty. It's been neglected. Okay? So all these others, meridians and everything are so pretty. What happened to us? Not that we're, that bad. We drive around it, parts of it look better than others, but it's not a dump. And I just think that without taxing us, this is a tax that we're gonna be stuck with forever and ever. If it starts at $300, it's gonna be $400 the next. You know how that goes. You get an HOA going or a tax, it's just gonna go up and up and up. A lot of us are on fixed pensions. A lot of the people in La Quinta are rich, good for them. But you add another $300-400 to a regular person and it's not gonna go over. So anyway, I want it to remain the same and improve on what we've got. I live near Adams. If something's dead, take the bush out and cap off the sprinkler that was watering it. Any other bushes, anything we've got, start from scratch, make it pretty, clean it up, trim it, and see what you've got. And also, we could fix things a little at a time. It took what, how many years to get this way? And you want us to fix it in one swift, kick. Why not take a section, let's just say Adams, and spruce it up a little bit. Add some DG, add a few boulders, blah, blah. That's not gonna cost an arm and a leg. And then have it, all moved up, section by section over a period of, 3 to 4 years, something like that, whatever's reasonable. Anyway, I don't know, I've lost the 3 minutes here. But anyway, I'm certainly against it. Every one of my neighbors that I talked to also had not heard of this. I had not heard of it. I didn't get anything in the mail. I called and they told me, we didn't have you down. We take the names from the city record. I said, well, I'm there. I'm paying taxes. I should be on your list. So something's wrong there that we are. And also, if this went to a vote, when are you planning on that? I heard spring.
We're not planning on anything right now.
Okay.
All we're doing is getting input from the
Uh-huh.
residents of whether they they want this done or they don't want it done in that. But no, we're not planning on any assessments or anything like that.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for your time, all of you.
Okay. Thank you. Mary Lamb?
Hello, my name is Mary Ann Lamb. I'm a new resident of La Quinta. I'm at 45390 Sunbrook Lane in North La Quinta. And I'm one of those people who is just finding out about this assessment. We just moved here in July of this year, and we love it. We came with the 120-degree weather, the fires, the earthquake. And I've got to tell you, you are some of the nicest people I've ever met in all of my 62 years. And I've been to many city council meetings back from where I was over on the west side that wouldn't give you the time of day, would interrupt, if you were saying something they didn't want to hear, would run over you. So I appreciate the fact that you are hearing my fellow neighbors and myself today. At first glance, I'm not for this either. At second glance, I want my neighborhood to be pretty. It's got a twofold sword here. If I don't have extra money to maintain the perimeters, then that will affect my property values. On the other hand, if I go to sell my house and there is an assessment in place, that's one of the first things a buyer asks. Are there any assessments? They don't want assessments. They'd rather have an HOA, but they don't really want an HOA either. And Connie, my neighbor, brings up a great point. When you're on a fixed income, and maybe you're just relying on Social Security or some annuity, every little penny counts. And people like us, we were downsizing, and everybody went through a rough economy, and everyone has a different story. Well, it's hard to find where that next 300, 400's coming. And of course, at this time, we would want to know, what exactly are we paying for? How long is it going to be held at this price? Are we going to have any representation on a panel? So I can see that this is just in the very, very beginnings. And I do appreciate the way you are handling these meetings. I feel that you're not See, when I first came here, I wasn't too sure that we weren't gonna be steamrolled. That's been my experience. Or that there'd be a vote put to vote and I wouldn't have a say. And all of a sudden I'd be assessed and, well, that's just good for me. I'm glad that that's not going to happen. But I will say, who's ever responsible for notifying my neighborhood, we're not getting it. I just found out from Connie yesterday. And it's just been the people in the neighborhood who have been putting out notices to let some of us know. And had I known that there was an assessment on the horizon, I might not have bought this house in North La Quinta. And my backyard faces Adams. And there's a couple of pine trees on that side of the wall, and I don't want them taken out. I love those pine trees. Oh gosh, now I gotta figure it out. So I am retired. I will volunteer to help on anything I can, get the word out to people so you get more input or whatever you need. But we've got some work. I mean, I want this to be pretty. I don't know what's up with the city manager. I've never met him. But I hear he's a real pistol and he's not making many friends.
There he is right there.
Are you there? Well, for heaven's sakes, what the heck's going on? Nice to meet you. So we need to get a little bit better communication going. And we need to hold on something on the money. I mean, a lot of people are still out of work. I'd like to go back to work, but unless I start an entrepreneurial thing, I don't think there's not much on the horizon. So it's gonna be tough for me to come up with that kind of money. And you know, that's only $25 a month. But $25 a month when you have a fixed income and nothing coming in, and maybe the government's going to mess with your Social Security. You know, and you're getting canceled on your health care, and then you can't get Obamacare, and you know, so everybody's faced with these issues. So it's just like, oh my God, and now we've got an assessment. So what probably didn't sound like a whole lot of money has now turned into a big affair. And
Please understand, we're not assessing.
Okay.
I mean, they're asking, you know, would you even consider it? But our plans are no assessments in that, unless the homeowners that live in a community want this. If they don't want it, then that's fine.
Well, I'm just here to tell you personally, having gone through just selling a house. And it was in Rowland Heights. It was an upscale community for Rowland Heights, and we just finished paying off a Melrose. There were no assessments. That helped. When you have a price point in the 8 and 9s, 100,000s, they don't want any assessments. Well, you know what? When you are in the 300s and 200s, nobody wants those assessments. It makes people uneasy because they don't know where the cap-off is. Also, on beautifying something, people, I think, need to see a picture. Oh, this is what you're gonna get. This is what it's gonna take. And I am retired, and I've only seen those landscape people. I think there's 10 of them. I saw those 10 only once, but thank God they were there because they helped take down my fire alarms that went off. About a ceiling I couldn't get. Anyway, thank you so much. We need some more information on this, and I tried to go online to find it, and I couldn't get to you. So that was a little wonky too.
Okay. All right. Thanks,
Okay,
Mary.
thank you.
Kathy Whitcomb?
Hello, Kathy Whitcomb, 78970 Bayberry Lane, North La Quinta. I live in the same area that these other people before me live. And I've only been here myself a short time, 5 years, 5.5 years. So I don't know all of the politics of the area like this first gentleman that spoke does. But I too had to dig my, somebody asked me about this postcard that we got in the mail. And I too thought that it was a postcard from a landscaping company or something that wanted to come and do your yard. And I dug mine out of the recycle bin I told Connie about this, word of mouth started spreading, and I understand that there was a meeting even before the one that I came to a few weeks ago, which I knew nothing about. Nobody in the neighborhood that I spoke with got one of these postcards. So somewhere along the line, there's a communication error between whoever is doing the notifications and where they're getting their information. Could be a computer glitch. But getting into the root of this, the parkways, I feel, would look absolutely stunning, beautified, no doubt about it. But I, like the rest of these people, don't want an assessment. I purchased my home because there was very little assessment. $35 a year, I believe, or $36 a year.
That's what you pay the city of La Quinta, period.
Exactly, and that's fine. I'm on a fixed income too. I happen to be on a disability, but you know, I have no means to get out to make this extra money. I put what money I had into beautifying and, you know, my own home, which I'm still paying for. And you know, to have another payment, which I look at this as, is just, it's really just not acceptable to me. And like this other woman that spoke, I mean, I can get out there and do a little work myself, but what do we need all of this beautification for? It doesn't do anything to our home values. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Anybody that thinks their home value is going to go up because the perimeter on the other side of the block wall facing the street is beautified is wrong. It does not increase your home value. Your home value is what it is. And I think that people need to understand that too, but I'm against this. I'm just against it. Anything that's going to cost me any more money at this particular point, I'm against it. Especially a pig and a poke, when we know nothing about what it is we are going to get. What are the plantings that they're even considering putting in there? You know, what type of guarantees are we going to have with this? We need to know more. So, but I'm still against an assessment. If you can figure out a way to do it without an assessment, that would be great.
I'm
You
sure.
know? And I'm sure that there's maybe a few of us in the neighborhood that would be more than willing to even help. I mean, get our hands dirty, literally. I have no problem with that.
If it's on city property, we will maintain it. The problem is, if it's on private property, we cannot go onto private property and do these things.
Are these perimeters from the block wall to the sidewalk, is that private property or is that city property?
At some of the entrances, I believe that when the development went in, the contractual agreement between the city and the developer takes precedent. And that's what you know. We're going to have to look at the individual situations to see, is that city property? Do we have the right to do this?
Yes.
If we don't have the right to do it, there's nothing we can do about it unless we want to take it over and annex that little piece of property at the entrance to the developments.
Mm-hmm.
But we need to get into it. Is what we need to do.
I think so. A little more information, maybe.
I think right now all we did was we had staff working with the different communities saying that it's not being maintained and we can't go in and do it. Do you want to be able to do something with it or not? And we don't want to assess people. No, absolutely, it's the last thing in the world we want to do. And we're not going to do it. If we went after an assessment, it would have to go before a vote of the residents of the city of La Quinta.
Well, see, that's another thing. This fellow that did this meeting a couple of weeks ago here, he said that the people that would be voting, the votes would only be counted if they came in. So if the people don't know that what's going on, they're probably going to take that vote right now, anyway, the way things sit right now, they're probably going to take that ballot and throw it in the trash can, which is almost going to be like a yes vote. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
I mean, if 5 people vote yes, and the rest of the people throw their ballots away, the
Or
yes
don't
vote
go
wins.
vote.
So,
Or
you know, I
mail it in.
mean, it just needs help.
Yeah.
It really needs help, and I'd be more than willing to help with it, so just call me.
Thank you, Kathy. All right. That's all I have right now. I want to thank you for bringing this to our attention, and that rest assured we will look at it and see what can be done to stop this. But again, you know, we're not asking you for money or to assess you. It's thrown out on the table. If you wanted it, if the various communities want it, fine. If you don't, then that's fine with us and that. But we need to get involved and a little bit more deeper into it to find out what has really been happening. Okay? All right, thank you very much. We need to move on. And the public comments, and that was all I had. So again, thank you for your comments. And that next item on the agenda is confirmation of the agenda. Any changes, additions, deletions by staff?
Mr. Mayor, one thing we would recommend is under the public hearing scheduled for 7 o'clock this evening, if we could switch the order and take public hearing item number 4 first, and then take 1, 2, and 3 in that order thereafter.
Okay.
Sure sounds good to me.
That's what we thought.
Okay.
Thank you.
Council members? No. All right. We'll move on to presentations. We have the Library and Museum Quarterly Report through September 2013. You want to come up, ladies, and tell us how things are going?
Well, if you're expecting Beth to come up, she's retired now. So, I will do the library report when we get to that point, and I'll let Ann start.
Get the museum first.
Yes. Council and city staff, good afternoon. The report from the museum is always a good one and continues to be. We have a great exhibit going now, Creativity in La Quinta Take 2, and the attendance is good. When we do these art exhibits, it's wonderful because we make 30 new friends with these artists, and they bring their friends and family and out-of-town relatives in, so we have see many more new faces in the museum. We have some great programs that we've done in connection with this. The most recent one was our Artists Open Studio Tour, the end of November, and this year we sold tickets and co-sponsored it with the La Quinta Historical Society. Last year we didn't sell tickets, and we estimated that we had about 150 people. This year we counted 180 people. So it seems to be something that's growing and may even turn into an annual event. Of course, the problem is the artists get all excited, and then I get emails that say, well, can we do another one in January? How about March? And I think maybe once a year is enough, but luckily they love it, and the people who attend seem to love it as well. The other thing we're working on right now is the next exhibit that will go up mid-January, and it's La Quinta Then and Now. What we're doing is digging into our archives to find images, old images and photographs and maps as early as we can go back, and we will put them on exhibit, and it'll be very fun to contrast the old maps and the old images with some new photographs of how things look in La Quinta today, so we're really excited about that.
Good.
Of course, one of the things that is actually planning stage is for our Day of the Child, which is our annual huge, very successful library event every year. And that will be in April. The staff is again working with the several of the child care groups. And if you were there last year, where it starts out outside of the library as a community event and then moves into the library for all kinds of activities and crafts and everything. And every child or every family gets a free book to take home with them. So those plans are already in place. And also we're already thinking about summer reading program. And the theme for next year is going to be, there goes my senior moment.
A good thing.
Yeah.
We will all have it.
It's the reading to the dogs. Maybe I should say, Beth, what is it?
Pause to read.
Thank you. Pause to read. But it isn't just dogs, it's all animals. So kids will love that summer reading program. So I think one of the new things that I am hearing about that is happening at the library is one of the reference librarians is taking appointments and meeting with an individual person for a half an hour on, I believe it's Wednesday and Thursdays. And that you can bring in whatever you want. If you want to bring in your Nook, or your iPad, or your Kindle, or your laptop, and have a half an hour personal experience in using that device. And that is, that is brand new, and that is very, very popular. She's taking 5 reservations at a time, and every reservation is filled.
Good.
So.
That's great.
Really looking at new things.
And you've got your programs all scheduled for this spring?
Well, not all of them, but they're continuing with, the No School Today films and all those things that have been so popular are continuing.
Good.
The Evening with Friends, that the Friends of the Library financially pay for.
That's great.
One question, if I could. In the report, you talk about it, the numbers are down a bit from a change in our automated system. What is that?
Well, I wasn't there when that happened. I don't know, maybe Beth will make a comment on it.
Because when we went from,
Or
everything,
Polaris.
computers were down, no checkout for,
So it's just the computer system was down for a while, so the numbers were down.
Complete new automation system. Staff had to learn a new way to do absolutely everything.
Okay, thank you.
And then the other thing, and I'll be honest, that impacted the people coming into the La Quinta Library during the summer months, comparing it, was that the Palm Desert Library was still being remodeled, and people wanted a good library to come to. And so then Palm Desert reopened, and a lot of them who actually lived in Palm Desert did go back to their existing location.
Good.
Plus, a lot of people go on vacation in August.
That's for sure.
They're smart.
Good. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Next item on the agenda, approval of minutes of November 19th.
So moved. Second.
Moved and second, please vote. Motion passes. We'll move on to the consent calendar.
Move consent calendar.
Moved and second, please vote. Motion passes. Okay, next item is business session. We have 2 this evening. The first one is select a representative to the Chamber of Commerce Workshop Informational Exchange Committee. Do we really need a staff report?
Not unless you would like one.
Yeah.
No, I think, Mr. Mayor, it seems to be your turn on the
it looks
dock.
like I'm in the
I'd like to
barrel.
nominate the mayor to be the next rotation.
Second.
Moved and second, please vote.
I love that.
Motion passes. I guess I'm it.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay, the next one is introduce an ordinance to amend the La Quinta Municipal Code regarding truck routes. The ordinance is 518. Staff report, please, Tim.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor, City Council members. From time to time, it's a good idea to review the truck routes in the city, depending on development patterns and so forth. Where they were appropriate before may not be appropriate at this time. It's been over 15 years since this was actually looked at last. And so with that, I'm going to ask Brian McKinney to go over our truck routes.
Thank you, Tim. This staff report consists of an ordinance to amend the La Quinta Municipal Code regarding the truck routes. Truck routes are designated for vehicles over 3 tons in weight.
3 tons?
3 tons, yes.
Okay.
And the roads that we allow trucks on are usually the arterials, which are designed to handle that kind of weight, which reduces our pavement rehabilitation costs in the long term. The non-truck route roads are limited to deliveries of merchandise and construction materials only. And we do have a periodic, there's a necessity for a periodic review of the truck routes to see if they're still applicable. And the current review was initiated by citizen complaints from residents along Adams and Dune Palms and Blackhawk. They were complaining of noise from the trucks going by, and also safety concerns, because there are numerous schools adjacent to these streets, and there's children walking to and from school, next to where trucks are going. So we, city traffic engineer took a look at these streets. We determined that they are mostly residential, and that the commercial areas can be better accessed through the other truck routes along Washington, Jefferson. These streets do not go all the way through the city north-south. There are other arterial roads such as Washington and Jefferson that do. So we determined that it would be right to remove these routes from the truck route map. And also we determined that it would be necessary to add Highway 111 to the truck route map, because it wasn't done when the city acquired the roadway from the state. And as you can see on the map, let me bring up the light blue areas are the routes we're looking to eliminate from the truck route along Adams, Dune Palms, and then the area of Blackhawk way between Adams and Dune Palms. And then in yellow striped is the Highway 111 throughout the city, which we want to add to the map. That concludes our staff report. Tim and I are available to answer any questions you may have.
Good. Thank you, Brian. Questions to staff?
No, I'm sorry, I do have a question. It's regarding the special permits for large, excuse me, large trucks. I actually remember looking at this 15 years ago, but I don't recall what the discussion was on the permits for larger trucks.
Well, they actually, for large, oversized loads, have to actually come ahead of time, get a hauling permit. Then, of course, we advise them where the truck routes are, and they are to follow those as they go through the city. If they have to make a delivery, as Brian mentioned, then then they would come off the truck route. But they would be responsible for staying on the truck route unless that was the case, that they had to make a delivery.
Okay, thank you.
Would vehicles such as cement trucks would be exempt? Moving vans, which are big and heavy, of course, would they be exempt from something like this, because they're fitting a need going over to somebody's house to move furniture, or again doing construction work?
Yeah, they wouldn't be exempt. They'd be required to stay on the truck route until the point when they have to get off to go to the house. But they are allowed on the other streets to get to the house and then back out to the truck route.
They don't need a permit to do this, a special permit? They've got their permit, of course, for the vehicle, but would they need anything else from the city to be able to do this?
No, I don't believe we require any special permits for those.
I don't think we have in the past, but
no.
Now with we're dealing with the new route, I didn't know whether this might change.
We're not changing any of the other requirements.
Yeah, because it's a necessity, of course, and you can't have, with the amount of construction that we have going on in the city, and it's building up as we know, that you'd be inundated in there trying to get a permit to go through this. Okay, good.
I have a question.
Anything else? Sure.
What kind of notification do we put up? Do we just put the sign with a truck and that's through it, or because you are changing, you're removing truck routes on Dune Palms and Adams?
I don't believe we have any signage on the routes at present. We just notify people who come in for the permits of the routes.
But if they're not coming in for a permit, how are they gonna? You have to do something to let truckers know that this is no longer a truck route. Yes, no?
Signage?
Well, I believe the requirement, we post this for one thing. It's known, I think, through AAA and others where the designated truck routes are. And certainly if they come in for an oversized permit, we give them the map of the truck routes. I believe the one segment of Westward Ho that is designated for, you can't have anything over a 3-ton limit or is it 5-ton limit, is, we actually have a sign for that. But we, you know, in the interest of not creating more signs than we absolutely have to have, we don't post every truck route.
What, is it possible for us to reconsider, because we're making a change, and we're making a change because apparently there were enough of these trucks to require, or that asked the request to do this, and how are those truckers going to know? Is there a way that we can do temporary signs for 6 months and then take them down?
Absolutely, sure.
Yeah, that was my point.
Yeah, I think we need that anyway.
Okay.
Especially those vehicles that are coming in and out all the
Yeah,
time.
no, they're not gonna stop unless there's a sign there.
That's true, and you had a lot of construction with the Adams Bridge, the Adams Street Bridge.
Yeah.
So those folks are used to going that route, so that would be great.
And I agree, you know, I don't want to inundate our city with a lot of signs, that's for sure. Okay. Anything else?
No.
All right, then I'll entertain a motion.
All right. With that, Mr. Mayor, I'll move to take up ordinance 518, amending section 112.56.011 of the La Quinta Municipal Code to change the truck route designation list by title and number only and waive further reading.
Second.
Moved and second, please vote. Motion passes. Susan?
Ordinance 518, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of La Quinta, California, amending, and that should be chapter, we'll change that, chapter 12.56 of the Municipal Code.
Thank you.
Thank you. And with that, Mr. Mayor, then I'll move to introduce ordinance 518, amending section 12.56.011 of La Quinta Municipal Code as set forth in said ordinance on first reading.
Moved and second, please vote. Motion passes. Okay, we'll now move on to our study session. It's an overview of an unmanned aircraft systems program. Chris?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'd like to introduce Mr. Frank Taylor, who's providing an overview of the program. So he's been providing presentation to public agencies throughout the valley, so we're next up.
Mayor, members of the council, thank you for having me back for a little bit more, a little longer presentation regarding this. And I'd like to thank Chris. He's, even though I was kind of wordy in my presentation, he got me focused down to just the right points, so this should go pretty quick. Earlier, or a couple of weeks ago, when I came in front of you, that I explained to you as after retiring from the Sheriff's Department after 29 years, I'm now part of a community safety consulting group, and it's a group of mostly retired public safety individuals that have been working on volunteering our time locally to increase public safety, do what we can for our communities, because most of us live here in the valley. We're working on increasing our expertise in the area of unmanned aerial systems for the future to help outside of the Coachella Valley and in the private sector when that time comes in. We'll discuss that a little bit. And as I get started, there's a term being used, and I think if any of you watched 60 Minutes on Sunday, they talked about Amazon is looking at the idea of using drones to deliver packages in the future. And I'm gonna say unmanned aerial systems a lot, unmanned aerial vehicles a lot. Drone tend to be a negative connotation term, and so those of us that have been working in this try to keep away from that and focus upon what exactly these are. Hopefully this will work right. Okay, the mission that we're working on in the program we're putting across, and as I get started here, this is being provided for education purposes only. An integration into the national airspace of these vehicles is coming in the future. A law was passed regarding it, and so we're trying to provide information so you as the officials can make decisions regarding these things in the future as they come across. We're focusing on supplementing search and rescue, increasing disaster preparedness locally. If when the earthquake occurs, There's only really two aerial systems to be able to use in the valley, one by the Highway Patrol and one by the Sheriff's Department. And the odds are that most of those are going to be used other places if they're saying that things could happen in that type of disaster the way it could be. So these type of systems could supplement and be used for future if localities decided to go that way. I know when they had the tornadoes in Moore in Oklahoma, they really had a hard time getting services to different areas during that disaster that occurred back there. So this is a supplement. And also to educate all of you so you can weigh in on this type of a program for the future. Local ordinances like Rancho Mirage has been kind of working on, and also the 2015 integration of the unmanned systems into the national airspace. We've given a lot of presentations in front of police chiefs, the sheriff, CVAC Public Safety, several city councils, and also the community service district down in the southern part of the valley. This is a picture, you have a package of it. We're talking about a small unmanned aerial system weighing less than 25 pounds. Most of the packages come in with 2 or 3 vehicles and a ground control station. That is so provided is these are real mission oriented, and so they're able to, if there's operational issues that occurs with the equipment, then you can go ahead and keep the mission going by using another one of the vehicles. So they usually come in a package of 2 vehicles and a ground station. Cost savings ends up being a real big part that we've tried to hit on a little bit. This system can reduce some of those costs that are put across. Right now it runs about, for equipment purposes, about $700 an hour to run a helicopter. That doesn't include the personnel attached to it. So a small unmanned aerial system can run about $30 an hour. They can be used by specifically trained volunteers or non-sworn instead of sworns, like a lot of them do for the public safety entities. The people that are running them have found that they can do about 30% of the work at about 2% of the cost that's put across for them. That still leaves about 70% of the work for the regular ground personnel to use, but it ends up being supplemental. It's not a replacement, but it ends up being a supplemental system for public agencies to use. Some noteworthy things, unmanned system is just a flying camera operated by a person. There's always a person involved with these systems. There's nothing new being used. Their helicopters have been used for decades. Cameras use both ground and air. Data has been retained, photos, video, dash cameras, automated license plate readers. Public agencies follow all the laws. They've been doing that for years, and citizens' rights and privacy are also a top priority for all public agencies. Recent history, the FAA Modernization and Reform Act of 2012 was put into place. It was, part of it was to be able to issue certificates of authorization for public agencies to use unmanned vehicles immediately, and then also a deadline of September of 2015 to work out for the FAA to come up with a plan to integrate unmanned systems into the national airspace as a whole, from the ground all the way up to 18,000 feet. The FAA rules that are in place right now that all the pilots and sensor observers, and usually these systems run 2 people, one to pilot the device and one to be the observer and run the camera systems that are attached. They all have to go through aircraft ground school, and they also all have to pass the private pilot's written exam. All of them must possess a Class 2 Airman's medical certificate. So there's a lot of training that has to go into the devices. And as a point regarding the rules, there's no commercial or business use allowed by the FAA right now. And any violations are up to $10,000 for violating that. We're promoting a program that has to do with a fixed wing device. It's an aircraft style. You saw a picture of it. It's similar to a conventional helicopter or an aircraft. The public and most people are used to seeing even though a helicopter can hover, they're used to seeing it circle around areas at a certain period of time. So a fixed wing device circles, and it's pretty much nothing new that they've already seen. They have rapid deployment within 5 to 10 minutes. They have an hour to 2-hour flight time. They're battery operated. They can go anywhere from 200 to 10,000 feet. And they're a lot less susceptible to weather conditions than the small copter styles that have been seen out there. Will this work, or do you need to click it? Oh, okay.
Ready?
Yep. This is a short video.
Welcome to this video demonstration of the Raven A unmanned aerial systems at Dugway Army Base in Utah.
Clear prop. Prop clear. All right, come out.
monitoring a controlled burn. Notice in this shot the two people monitoring the burn in the lower right and center of the screen. Controlled burns are used by various agencies for vegetation management. Here we switch to the infrared camera. Notice that the fire shows as white on the screen. The infrared camera has two modes for indicating heat sources, white hot or black hot. Heat generating objects, such as animals, fires, or buildings, will appear white or black depending on the mode chosen. Here the buildings are shown in white hot mode, and in a second we'll switch to black hot mode. Right there, black now indicates the heat source, and as you can see, the switch can be made in mid-flight. The mission control station is designed to be very portable and quick to set up in the field. Here is the ground control unit and batteries, and the laptop for tracking flights and recording video. This is what it would look like to survey vegetation types in ground cover, or look for large animals or sandhill cranes with a color camera. The Raven crew consists of the pilot in command, the mission control pilot, and 2 observers. The Raven is now making its landing.
Was it a successful?
It is.
It disappeared.
Back to the PowerPoint.
Okay, just so from the device, this is a picture that was taken from it. They can take video, but this is also some of the uses that it can be. This is a picture of a park where there was a big vandalism that was done by an agency that run these. And what this picture is, it's a mosaic of about 150 pictures that are taken. They're through 3D modeling. They're all stitched together, and they make a big mosaic of all the pictures that they're back in Colorado, where they've been running these. They're using these now in public safety fatal traffic collisions that occur. They're able to take a scene that usually takes about 6-8 hours to clear with evidence-wise in this, and they're able to do it in about 2 hours with the video and the GPS mapping that's done with this. So it's a real big cost saving that's moved forward. A little bit on private model aircraft. They're out there. You've seen them in different places in the parks. They're gonna, in the future, they're gonna probably have an impact on public safety. SB 15, which is one of the laws that have been moving through the legislature, and it's gone pretty much the farthest. It doesn't have a lot of overly restrictive elements for public safety, as long as public safety is reasonable in how they use the devices. But what it does do is it adds a civil content to public safety can have civil ramifications for looking into people's property or looking into their yards and different things like that. What it ends up doing is adding a civil connotation to private people. So if a private person looks in your backyard or looks in somebody's house with a high-powered telescope, they can be held civilly liable for it. If they use a UAV with a camera to do the same thing under SB 15, they'll be able to also be civilly liable for using that. They're also setting certain regulations in place to be able to, that locals can set up their own city ordinance if they choose. They can be more restrictive if they want to. And also they're recommending that images that are taken by the devices be destroyed in a reasonable period of time. So that's kind of where it's gone through the Senate and pretty much all the way through the Assembly now, and it should be picked up here pretty soon in the next session. So when this is put in place and when the systems come in, there's going to be calls for service in communities regarding these unmanned aerial systems. The calls will probably end up going via 911. Law enforcement will have to respond. They'll have to figure out if it's a recreational user just using a model aircraft or a hobby craft. Is it a commercial business that's doing like real estate or something like that? Or is it somebody that's a peeping Tom that's out there? But it's going to end up equaling future impact on public safety. So that's part of the education process that we're putting across
So
here.
law enforcement send out their UAS to monitor the plane UAS?
sensor device so they'll be able to attract them. So anyway, the education plan, or the action plan, is transparency and accountability up front. That's what we've come across to do, instead of like a lot of agencies have had a negative problem in the past by not educating people ahead of time, or the government officials ahead of time. Local county community meetings, local businesses and colleges, focusing on a fixed wing system. Regional acceptance throughout. We've gone to a lot of the cities, almost all the cities, and I'm going to be in Rancho Mirage on Thursday, because the process may allow these to go from city to city and over different jurisdictions, so people should be aware of that as it occurs. And also making sure privacy and searches at the onset up front in public, and include the media in that. And that's the end of my presentation. I can take any questions if you have any.
Thank you. Questions of staff? Christy?
I do have one, Frank. My very first thought when I was looking at this is invasion of airspace. I can just see one of these little boys flying around up there and zapping into a commercial airliner or something, and so tell me why that's not going to happen.
Well, the FAA is working on the regulations on these, and they're calling it detect and avoid right now, and that's a big process they're going to. Right now, they're restricted to stay under 400 feet, which all the aircraft fly, most of the rest of the aircraft fly above that. In the future, if they're going to fly above that, they're going to probably make them have detect and avoid, which the UAV itself, by way of computer, the systems and software, will have to be able to detect something coming towards it, and then it will move over to another place away, and then circle and wait for the target to move to another location. That's what the process that their FAA is working on before they allow them to get above 400 feet. From that sense, from 400 feet to 10,000 feet is the range that they're worried about with a lot of these. I think they're more worried about not the UAVs running into a plane, but a plane that's not watching, or a pilot that's not watching, running into one of the UAVs and having
Well,
that
yeah,
issue.
they're not that big.
The ones that are above 10,000 feet have transponders on them, and they're able to be seen by the air traffic controllers, and so that's part of what. And they're also working on small transponders to be able to put on them. You'll probably see that in the next 5 years or so. They have all of these will have transponders, so their traffic controllers can figure out where they all are. So the little tiny ones you might, I don't know if you'll see the Amazon ones in the future, but something like that.
I'm sure you're going to get a lot of UFO calls. Thank you. I'm certainly not opposed to this. I think it has merit, but I hope everyone's taking it slowly, and we're not going to jump the gun on it. It is kind of Big Brotherish to me.
Right. And I think if you think about the Big Brother aspect of it, there's another part of a more extended version of the slides that the software is able to, as these are flying around, the software is able to detect by way of satellite where the device is at any given point in time, and then also when the camera is deployed and pointed to where the camera is pointed to and deployed to, and then all that can be put into a log so people can look at it at a later time. So when they're if public safety or a public agency is using them, you're able to show to the public that nobody's peering in their backyards and in their windows or anything like that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Frank, in the video, it talked about the different types of cameras. I mean, you've got infrared, and so you'll have infrared cameras on there, because I can see for search and rescue it'd be huge. I know, on the trails and everything, you guys have had to be up there before in the past with your helicopters and whatnot for search and rescue. So I'm glad to see you got the infrared. And you guys have spent a lot of time talking about the limited use from a standpoint in backyards and whatnot. Who would be the operator? Would it be the sheriff's department, in our case, the operator, or would it be a private service as the operator?
I think for the future that's going to be up to the agency or the local government about how they're all going to do that. From a public sector standpoint, you'll probably see they believe they're going to come into the agriculture industry sooner probably from private sectors. So you'll have private industries probably maybe contracted to be able to do those type of things, but under regulations of the FAA and whatever local ordinances that are in the place. From a public safety standpoint, it'll be each one of them. These are all real mission specific. So whether or not they're able to be used on a full-time basis or not is a question that the agency has to look at. We've been moving as a regional aspect of it, and a lot of the chiefs of police we've put across it. Maybe a regional idea would be something for the future to be able to have a different usage of it. But I can't speak for the law enforcement agencies. We've just been trying to educate them just as the same way as educating you. So however that
I would just want to make sure whoever that operator is has a very, very strong sense of use of that device, that they will not decide to go over somebody's house just because they're in the neighborhood per se. And so the operators, again, need to be extremely mindful of that. I mean, you talk about the civil liability standpoint, and again, in our case, if Riverside County Sheriff's Department is the operator, they would be exposed to civil liability in this case?
Well, if they were the ones, or any agency was doing it, if they would have the same liability they would have for any type of device, or any device or person or anything like that. So there would, for cities that contract, if a department, if they contract with somebody, they have an indemnification for that. If there's other agencies that do it within their other cities, yes, they have some potential liability if there's infractions or negative things that occur from that. But just on a side thing to explain one thing is what we've been promoting is to follow all the FAA rules. Whatever agency is going to go, if they go down this road, to follow the FAA rules, to use trained personnel because they're trained through ground school and passing the FAA requirements, but then also on top of that, they're trained by the manufacturers of the device, how to use the device, and then also ends up being real important from a public safety standpoint to be able to have people that understand the public safety idea, being able to communicate with the ground personnel that are down there. So I can see involvement by people that have experience from all of those and understand all the civil aspects of it also.
I would hope so, because I can certainly see a number of people here in this area that say, well, one was over my house. And so that's my first and foremost concern, that we end up having residents saying, you know, they're looking at my backyard, and whatever that may be, I don't know. But so my concern is the operators of these are very well mindful, not just the technical side, but the civil side, and for the community.
Right. And then also, I have another slide that talks about that, because it ends up being that we've been promoting that all the video, any video that's taken be available for public viewing at any time, which is kind of something that hasn't happened before, but it's something that needs to happen regarding this new technology.
Great idea.
That unless it's sealed by a court for some investigative purposes. And I think most people, including some of the activist groups, say the same thing. If a court seals it or a court orders it, they're okay with that. They have issues regarding this willy-nilly flying around and taking video of things. But so I think taking that point of making sure all the video and pictures are available for public viewing anytime they want to, plus, like I explained to you, the data of where the camera is, where the device is, and where it's pointing to, and have that data available for public inspection at every time. It shows a lot of transparency up front when you're putting this across to people.
Very good. Thank you, Frank. Terry?
Yeah, well, Frank, I think we're all in the learning stage, and so new and more pertinent information will become available as we go along. In fact, I think Lee's question addressed the very reason why Rancho Mirage is looking at putting perhaps the first ordinance together for any of the cities, was because there are folks in Rancho Mirage that have already had drones flying over their house, and I don't remember if they had cameras or not, but certainly the homeowner got quite concerned. So that's why they jumped on that, and we will reap the benefit of the examination they put into their ordinance. But your presentation did bring up a question when you were talking about the mosaic and the ability for gathering information in a much shorter period of time than 7 or 8 or 9 hours. the information that is gathered at a site like that very often becomes evidence.
Right.
And I remember when signatures being faxed were not accepted as legal documents. We had to wait for a new law to come in and finally overcome that issue. Will we, this evidence that is on a mosaic, is that going to be accepted as the same kind of evidence that was gathered over 7 or 8 hours? And is there a chance that without having on-site and looking at a picture, that things could be missed?
I think it's a technology that's out there that's going to be able to accomplish that goal.
Okay, so it's kind of working on
Being
its
able to
own,
prove
too.
that ahead of time. A long time ago, we've run into, law enforcement ran into this for years. They ran into this using digital cameras. When you took a digital photo, was that the same as a 35mm photo? Now, as you well know, there's no 35mm film left, and so it takes time to be able to do that. And it's going to be a process regarding putting that through the court system, and that's why part of it, we've had part of one of our consultants is a retired deputy district attorney to look at some of those issues too, and then also be able to work through them and explain to people about that. But as I talked about the mosaic, there being evidence, it ends up being to the point where if it was seized that way, it would be then a court order to have it sealed, so it wasn't for public viewing at that moment in time. But if the public came in and wanted to look at that, they would see that that part of it had been sealed, and they would understand that that's what was done during that process.
Good enough for right now, thank you.
Okay, good. Linda?
Yeah, I guess this is the whole invasion of privacy concern, and you know, do we take a proactive approach as we're being educated, like Rancho Mirage, in terms of ordinance development? I wouldn't even know where to begin, and maybe staff has already started vetting what other cities might be doing to ensure their residents that these would be used appropriately to aid in the public safety sector versus some type of libel situation.
Well, it's important to note that Frank did give this presentation at the Public Safety Committee at CBAG.
Very good.
So we've all had it, and we've all recommended that they go out to the individual cities.
Great.
So everybody probably has
who's going, who's on first.
Going first, yeah.
Right.
And I don't have the answer to that, but.
And at this point, the program is in our radar. We need to examine it more
Pun
closely,
intended.
as well as work with our police department to see how it fits in line with our police model.
Perfect. Very interesting, Frank. Very interesting. Thank you.
You made some comment that these have transponders on them. I hope they're better transponders than the one I have on the front end of my car, because sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't.
Ooh, mine works all the time.
I wish we'd find somebody that would fix mine to make sure mine works all the time, because it doesn't. Chris, do we have any sort of ordinance that deals with height elements in our city, not building heights, but elevations that people can go under? I'm thinking, you know, we used to have a lot of balloons coming through. We don't anymore, but we used to. Do we have anything in our codes that deals with this issue?
Not to my knowledge, it addresses kind of the airspace above, but we can further look at that as a part of the program.
Yeah, I guess my concern is, and I notice they're relatively quiet. They're not noisy, and that the wrong people, that drones become accustomed, that we see them often enough that the wrong people get drones and they use them for illegal purposes, let's put it that way, and that, how do you control something like this? I mean, you know, the police department, they go through these issues all the time. You know, we have them out there to protect us and things like that, but crime still happens in that, and they do a wonderful job to protect it, but it does happen. Is there any way that the FAA can control something? You know, how do they handle something like this?
I think the FAA is working on coming up with the regulations to be able to control the small unmanned systems.
If you're a criminal, you're not going to worry about regulations.
As I talked about the business commercial uses, there's probably 10,000 companies throughout the U.S. that are already using them commercially against FAA regulations. The FAA, from what I get from them, they send a letter to everyone they hear about to be able to take care of it. They've had some issues with sequestration and different things like that, trying to be able to get a handle on top of it. It's going to end up being a local issue to be able to do that. And
I see that.
I think I won't speak for Rancho Mirage, but I think they put theirs on hold to see where SB 15 would end up.
Good
and I think
idea.
it gets most of the parts that they were looking at out there. You know, may come up at some point in time that if anybody needs or wants to fly any of these in a city, maybe it's simple as, if you're going to do this for some reason, or you're commercial, if the FAA authorizes it, you need to come in and maybe take out a permit from us. Maybe it doesn't cost anything, but at least you know where they are and who's doing it. So it kind of helps public safety from a standpoint to kind of gauge. You know,
I can see our police officers being given handheld missiles, and that they could shoot them down when they find out that they're working illegally.
And what we're talking about here is a small unmanned system, no weapons attached to it. You'll never see any weapons attached to anything in the United States.
We hope not. That's right.
Yeah, but they could have that little bucket flying
bucket
around.
carrier.
Yeah.
Well, it's going to be interesting to see how this evolves in that. And
I'm sure
the
you'll see it come
usage.
across in front of you in the future again someday, and so it helps to be able to do this process. We're going to be in community meetings in different areas to work with the public and different things like that, so it's kind of an evolving process.
Okay. Thanks, Frank.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, that was a study session. There's no action to be taken on it, so we'll move on to reports and informational items. Linda, you want to start us off?
I have nothing to report, no meeting yet.
Okay.
Until next time.
Okay, Christy?
The only one that I have to report would be the animal campus. And basically, at the last meeting, there was quite a bit of discussion about repairing the kennels, which I've talked to you about before, that are pricey, and evidently the county has found some money.
Really?
Yes, they
Yes.
gave $5 million.
For the animal shelter?
Yeah, they found $5 million from the local municipality.
Yeah.
Oh,
At any rate, they're
I got you there.
they're starting with
Yeah.
repairing the floors in the kennels, and that's going out for bid right now. So that's it for now.
Okay.
Yep.
Terry?
Nope. I gave all my reports
Lee?
at the last meeting.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. I have just the Imperial Irrigation ECAC meeting. We had a meeting last night, and we had our budget meeting. As you may remember, I was on the subcommittee on the budget review, and we looked at that. This IID staff is proposing about a 12% increase in the rates. Now, that is after they put in $33 million to buffer that increase. Now, the $33 million is coming out of a fund that currently has $100 million. So they'll be using that fund for 2014, 15, and 16. Come 2017, that fund is gone. So it is going to be, a huge problem that's building up ready. Now, I say this, a huge problem coming in the future, but that's given that the board approves this increase. Because last year at this point in time, I was reporting to you that the EAC approved a rate of about 10% increase. However, the board decided not to do that increase, and again, funded that difference with their reserves, about $36 million. So they run out of that fund. Actually, they used $10 million more than they should have. So now they're going after this, using this other fund. So one, we'll see if the board approves the increase, about, again, 12%. And two, we'll see that, if they're going to continue using those funds, and I'm sure they will over the next 3 years, to use up that $100 million. Keeping in mind Imperial Valley, or I should say Imperial County, the average unemployment rate for that area is 25%.
Oh, wow.
So the board is under extreme pressure to keep the rates low as possible. Not to mention, though, that they're giving back $18 million in these public service funds, you know, to help with insulation or help with a new air conditioner or help pay your bill entirely. So they're putting quite a bit of money back into the community, you know, to serve, you know, for efficiency purposes. But, and again, you know, you go back to the green energy issue. The normal energy cost for like but for like natural gas or hydroelectricity or coal energy, they buy that. All that runs at a cost, I'm not going to say per kilowatt or per hour or whatever. Generally, it runs about $4 a unit. Green energy runs $100 a unit. So, as Sacramento and its
wisdom
will look to increase the mandatory amount of green energy used by utility companies, their operating cost, the cost of fuel, is only going to get higher. Meanwhile, they're using all the reserves to maintain the lower rates today. So we'll see how that goes. You know, another problem they've got, well, you know, they've got capital projects on transmission lines. They're short about $60 million to fund their capital projects. So they will probably issue a bond and go into debt to support their capital projects. And that will be coming probably in another year or two. They're trying to negotiate deals right now on transmission lines with some of the geothermal companies that they'll pay for those. Or other utilities will pay for these transmission lines to run power through the Imperial County or through IID's facilities, including up here in this area, I should say. So we'll see what happens there. They did approve a small project where they're relocating the lines over in Thermal because of the grade separation on Avenue 56 over the railroad lines in Thermal. So the power company has to spend almost $400,000 to change some of those lines. And like I said, the public service benefit funds about $18 million this year. We'll see what happens in the next 3 or 4 years with IAD, but it's going to go up substantially at some point in time, substantially by 30 to 40% substantially. So we'll see when that hits us in a couple of years, and we'll see if the board either decides to go ahead and make this increase of 12% or decides not to again. Of course, there's a number of board members down in Imperial Valley that don't want any increase at all, but we'll see. The new energy manager, Carl Stills, has reformed the energy department and put new people in different places. And I think he's doing a good job, but his budget went up $1 million. So,
well, $1 million here, $1 million there.
So we'll see what happens with IID, and I'll let you guys know. The board will be looking to approve that budget later this month, effective January. So I will let you guys know. My next meeting's the first week of January, so I'll come back in at that time and let you know what the board decided. That's all I have.
Okay, yeah. I just have one, and Frank and I attended the executive board of CDAG last night, and one issue that we dealt with, and I'll read the subject matter, is consider agreement with the city of La Quinta to provide funds to supplement highway bridge program grant funds for Dune Palms Road. It was approved, so they're going to pick up the tab 3/4 of the dollar amount, so, which is good news, and no problem.
Yeah, well, that was recommended by the Transportation Committee.
So that was good. Okay, and that's all we had, and that we'll move on to department report. City manager.
One new item, try as we might, we couldn't find enough material to put on the January 7th, 2014 agenda. So we will not be holding a city council meeting on January 7th of 2014. I forget the date that the meeting will be on 2 weeks later. I guess it would be the 1st. So our first meeting for the new year will be on the 21st of January.
Someone going on vacation again?
Nope.
Okay. City attorney?
I have no report.
Okay. City clerk?
I have no report.
And department directors? Nothing?
Before you, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to ask Edie on um, report regarding art in public places and the strategic plan, if I could. In looking at this in the Art in Public Places program, I think we've got a great program. I think we've had some challenges with just a couple of pieces of art, as you know, and we dealt with the one on 111. I think we have those, whatever you want to call them, rocks at the corner by the Fig disasters that was. I think what we paid, 35,000, 50,000 for a couple of.
30,000.
Yeah, yeah. What I want to ask though is if we can use the La Quinta Arts Foundation going in the forward. I mean, we've got a fantastic foundation with great artists. I know nothing about art to be able to vote on something up here, and I would greatly appreciate their point of view on the art that we're looking at for the city. I mean, we've got over $600,000 in that fund, so we will be, spending that going into the future.
We do, and a number of them are allocated to projects, as you know, with the Dunes project that would be coming up, and we just use them for the Adams Bridge project that's coming up. We do use them, probably more than you know. Christy and I work together a great deal, and often she'll recommend artists. I'll call her on particular projects, and she'll recommend artists to developers. And from time to time, even with different projects, I'll just call her and get an opinion about some names. As a matter of fact, we're doing that on the roundabout. I had called her and asked her for some names on the for artists in the roundabout. So that happens more than you may know. We don't always ask them on every project because we do have a commission that reviews those projects as well. But we work with Christy.
What commission does that go before?
It goes before the community services.
It does. Okay, I just want to make sure we're still using that in that regard.
They look at everything before it comes to you for your final approval.
Wish they would have looked at those rocks in front or whatever they're called.
Well, that was years ago.
That was BE before E.
Great, I appreciate that. I think, they've got some great artists and they know much more about art than I certainly do, or some of us up here. But to vote on some of these things, I appreciate, their comments on that.
Hey, beauty is in the eye of the beholder.
Well, I don't know about those rocks, but, or that piece on 111 used to have. But anyway, all right, no, thank you.
But yes, no, Councilman, we do use them a great deal, and they are a big resource for us on both public projects and commercial projects.
And one of the public places, that aspect of being in a public place, we've already mentioned the concern about that last piece on the Alzheimer's project. That is not in a public place, and maybe it's a publicly open parking lot, but unless you're in that parking lot, you don't see it.
It's a little bit like Point Happy. You have to be in that parking lot to see that location, and we do have some of them that are set up like that you have to drive to those locations. We don't have many, but we do have several.
Just in the future, if you could be more mindful,
we'll be
please.
thoughtful about that.
Thank you. That's all I have. Thank you very much.
Follow up on the question. I will follow up with the artwork that at Highway 111 in Washington is on the parking lot, and then add to that we should have learned from that one. And now we have a second one, so we should learn that these developers, and I'm sure that I was in support of that, but these developers, if they want to do something of that nature, it's got to be more public than kind of an isolated spot like that is. And in fact, that was going to be my question under art acquisition, the public process. On the 1, 2, 3, 4th paragraph, I'm just letting you know now so that it's just a concern in the wording where it says local developers have the opportunity to integrate public art into or adjacent to their residential or commercial projects. I'm just a little concerned about the word into in terms of what we were just talking here, that they don't take that to mean that they can put the statue at the country club that's inside the gates and.
No, we
learned that too.
Right. They don't go anywhere without having a conversation with our staff about exactly how that is the intent for that.
Yeah, I was just
Yes, we'll be
concerned about
careful about that.
somebody walking away saying, oh, well,
We'll
let me
take
speak
it.
here, or I could put this piece of artwork.
Yeah.
Well, I guess, I mean, I had a couple of questions. When you look at, you know, the purpose and providing direction in terms of identifying areas of enhancement, seeking new ways to promote the Art in Public Places program, and I look at the list, and granted, because most of it's public access, et cetera, you know, with the exception of the La Quinta High School mascot mural, you know, we're missing the youth and the school's integration in some capacity, and whether or not we're not placing actual art there, but what type of, I know we've got the map that will show visitors where it is, you know, is there some type of either student or even visitor activity that we could promote that enables people who come and look for art, that if they take a picture of and they find these things and bring them to City Hall in their iPhone or whatever, that then they get that great box of note cards like the museum sells with all the old La Quinta homes or things like that. I know something that is an activity that actually causes people to want to go see all of them.
We can look
Or
into something
schools,
like that.
or have a kid designed entity where
Neat
it
idea.
is still a public place, but it's something that's the youth in our schools that are creating this component.
Sure, we can certainly look into that. We are working with Truman currently on their
Good.
handball courts.
Great.
So we're gonna be
Great,
doing
glad
a
to
joint
hear
it.
project with the school and each teacher and the students in each grade to refurbish the handball courts with public art. And the students and the art teacher and the school district are gonna be working with us on that. So you'll see something here in the next few months
Fantastic.
about
Good.
that kind of a project.
Because
But
I-
in relationship to the marketing, we can look into something that if, that
And
might
I,
be
you
able
know,
to
obviously you always
coordinate
want it to be some type of, I'm always looking for a revenue generator, and that doesn't necessarily do that. But by going to these different places, it forces people to go down to the village or to go to the North La Quinta. It takes them to places that they may not have gone just to go seek out that piece. And I know the Arts Foundation does a lot with the schools. So connecting that somehow with the bringing just more of the youth component, especially as we're developing our wellness center, multi-generational, that might be another component to
We can,
add
we
to the
see,
program.
we also have a lot of people that come in for those maps, because there are a number of people interested. And, we've even been talking about an interactive, something you could look online and see all of those too. Or
Right.
at least some of them.
Somehow
We pull them
capture,
in
you know,
there.
capture the fact
So
that.
we've got a few ideas about that,
Yeah.
just
Good.
time to be able to put them together.
Okay.
Good.
And just sort of a follow-up on that, I was looking at all the places where we have art, public
Mhm.
places, and the north side is sorely lacking. Is there a way that, because we don't have a lot of development going on there, I mean, you know,
But we
it's
just
kind
put
of
200,000
built out.
into the Adams Street Bridge with public art.
I know, but,
And
Well, yeah, the
Yeah.
rails.
the rails, and
Yeah.
so, you know, the hardest part is there's a lot of subdivisions there that could potentially have some art if, we would need to coordinate with
Maybe
community.
that would solve some of the problems that we had out here
Yeah,
earlier.
we're not talking about landscaping, we're talking about
No.
public art,
Yeah.
and that's a
Well,
big
well,
difference.
the art piece.
Yeah.
But
There
that's
was-
a possibility.
it's so
It's
concentrated
hard
civic
because
center.
there's not the commercial
Yeah.
development in
Right.
the
Right.
north side. I mean, it's primarily residential, so
Mhm.
we have fewer opportunities to do things. We've done a few things with the school kids
Yeah.
And the park, the dog park.
And the park. the
And-
dog
I see
park, and
opportunities
the-
with CV
and
Link in the
La Quinta
future.
Park, too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
CB Link could be yeah.
Oh, yes,
That's a whole
sure.
other
Yes,
discussion.
I think that's a real
Yeah.
opportunity for us.
Mhm.
Much later.
anyway, just keep it in mind.
Yes.
We're talking about, I don't want them to feel like the ugly stepchild up
No,
there.
we, I think we mentioned that in the program too.
Yeah,
That's one of the
okay.
things.
Great report, though.
Well, one additional comment for Councilmember Osborne. Be careful what you wish for, because originally, the La Quinta Arts Foundation, way back, was a significant part of the Cultural Arts Commission.
Right.
And they were there when they approved.
Yeah, that piece.
The piece at 111 in Washington.
Yeah.
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 Thanks, Edie.
Very good, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, let's see, Mayor and council members' items, anybody have anything?
Mr. Mayor, I do, and we talked a little bit about CV Link. My concern with CV Link and we've seen it with CVAG before, is they create such a grandiose plan that all of a sudden they say, okay, La Quinta, here's your CV Link plan, go at it. And all of a sudden, our funding, whether it be for construction or for maintenance, isn't something that we've had control of from a design standpoint. And,
Were we given a funding?
no.
No.
Oh.
No, but what my
80 million that they're
my
supposedly
thought
gonna
is
get is
that
gonna take care of that.
regarding our section from Washington to Jefferson, that we design it under our own guidelines. So we control what it's gonna cost to maintain it. We control what it's gonna cost to build it. Not being handed it from CVAG to say, okay, here it is. You know, and
Well, I
whether it
like-
be
I-
homeless shelters or
This
something else.
hasn't been resolved.
They built something, but we're already creating something up there on this area. I mean, we've got the walkways, we've got the area set there.
The area
We've
is
got,
set
you know, the
for
drive set
future.
there, right.
That's
And-
it.
And
That's
my
all.
concern is just that we take control of that instead of CVAG.
Those
so
issues
we
will
can
come
design it
before us
ourselves.
in the future.
Well,
Right
this
now,
council's
there's
never
nothing.
approved the project.
I realize all that, I know all
Yeah.
that, and I know, you know, it's got its own legs and it's going.
Oh,
you
yeah.
know, and so, you know, Tom and his group, you know, are doing quite a bit of public, you know, information on it, and I like the idea, but being fiscally minded, I don't wanna be handed something that one can't afford, and one we don't wanna maintain, because it's too expensive.
That's right.
All of a sudden, we've got,
Those-
you know, a 30-foot swath for electric vehicles and this and that and the other, and we don't wanna maintain something like that. So
Well, I
I'm
don't
just
think
saying,
that our folks that
to
were
stay
here
ahead of
earlier-
that, yeah, to
Yeah.
stay ahead of that in the sense that we design our area so we know what we've got on it and what it's gonna cost to maintain it. And that's just it, I want the control for us to design our area.
And it's
And,
interesting because we've got the easy part compared to some of our sister
Yeah, we
cities.
really do, yeah.
We've really got some problems.
Right, and honestly, I think that that's actually a positive for us, because when you look at some of the components and some of the route challenges that exist, I think we can leverage the fact that we've been proactive in our planning and utilize whatever allocation it would have cost had La Quinta not been proactive in their bridge development, and use those for the school access points, the business access points, and make those in and out routes to promote our other business and safe school routes to our advantage, knowing that the hard construction will have been taken care
Well,
of.
Tom knows my feeling. I've got some strong feelings about what we're doing on this thing. And when Tom promotes this, he looks over at me and he backs off, because he knows that these issues like maintenance and things, the cost and liabilities and that, I've got some strong feelings. I've got to know the answers.
Yeah, I mean, cause, you know, I learned big time in regarding to Roy's homeless shelter.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, they built this huge thing, and all of a sudden, we're handed a big bill. And I don't wanna have that happen to us again with this evening. You know, and that's my
Absolutely
concern,
not.
that we've got some of that control.
But we'll be dealing with it.
Yep.
Okay, anything else? Okay, with that, then I'll recess the city council meeting, and we will reconvene at 7 p.m. At this time, I'll call to order the regular meeting of the successor agency to the La Quinta Redevelopment Agency, our meeting for Tuesday, December 3rd, 2013. Let it be known that all agency members are present. Next item on the issue on the agenda is public comment. Anybody wishing to speak on this item? Seeing none, we'll move on to confirmation of agenda. Any changes by staff
There are none?
and by agency members?
No.
None. There's no presentations or written communications, so I'll ask for approval of minutes of November 19th.
So moved.
Moved and second, please vote. Motion passes. Next item is consent calendar.
Move consent calendar. Second.
Moved and second, please vote. Motion passes.
Move adjournment. Second.
Moved and second, please vote.
I'm sorry, Councilmember Franklin and Osborne didn't register.
They now are registered. Okay, well, we're in recess.